All right. Happy Monday, everybody. Beautiful day outside. It's a little bit cooler this week, so I don't want to hear any excuses about you not door knocking. All right, class dismissed. I'm just kidding. Okay, so obviously it's a big week with some of the changes going on in the world. We have tomorrow, as of tomorrow, which is the 13th, the commissions, buyer agent commissions will no longer be on the MLS. So that's starting tomorrow. But all the main rules go into effect Saturday, which is the 17th. Okay, so if you're doing anything over the weekend, you got to make sure you're following the rules, and certainly going into next week, the rules are going into place, which is again Saturday the 17th. So what are some of the basic rules? No commissions on the MLS, which again is going to start tomorrow, but no commissions on the MLS. And then buyer representation agreements must be signed when showing any property. Otherwise, you will get fined. Okay, so those are some of the basic things. So I'm going to highlight some of the key points and then open it up for as many questions as you want, just to make sure that you're fully understood of everything that's going on. But before I do that, I want to make sure, because I talk the most, but that doesn't mean I know the most. So we have to make sure that we give a big shout out to Jackie Barndollar, Terry Ryan, Eddie Cisneros, because those three are really the backbone behind all of the knowledge we have in terms of this NAR stuff. And even though I'm the one that kind of says a lot of it and is kind of the face of everything, it's just because that's my title and I like to talk, so it kind of matches, right? But we got to make sure that those three get recognition, 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 recognition. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because boy, we are really lucky to have those three people work for our company to make sure that we're doing all this the right way. So appreciate all of that. All right, good stuff. So let's jump into this a little bit. So I sent out a cheat sheet to agents in our company today. So I'm going to share that screen because we're going to reference some of that. But if you didn't get that, should have been in your email. And again, if you didn't get it, just let me know and we'll make sure to get that out to you. But let me share my screen here for a second so you can kind of see a little bit about some of the stuff we're going to talk about. All right. Working with sellers. So commission at the listing appointment. So the new listing agreement will have a spot for the listing agent commission and a spot for commission to the listing agent if the house is purchased by an unrepresented buyer. There will not be a spot for buyer's agent commission on the new listing agreement. Okay, so that's something that will have to be verbally agreed upon by the listing agent and the seller. Now, let me ask you a question. Should you have a discussion with your seller about buyer's agent commission, even though it's not on the contract?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Some of you are not nodding your head yet. Okay, we'll work on that. Okay. This is the AI version of you, apparently. You need to have that discussion, even though it's not on the contract. You need to have that discussion with the seller of what are you going to be compensating the buyer's agent. Now, essentially, there's three main options, right? You can offer the buyer's agent a set percentage or dollar amount, which is commonly the practice used today. So can you still offer a buyer's agent 2.5%?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you could go in and take a listing and say, look, the total commission, Mr. and Mr. Seller, is 5%. I'm going to keep 2.5%, and then we're going to offer 2.5% to the buyer's agent. The way that you've been taking listings pretty commonly for probably all of your careers, you could do the same thing today. That 2.5% just won't go on the buyer's agent or it won't go on the listing contract.
Yes. Yeah, I just felt it now.
Oh,
Oh, that's a big earthquake.
yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
you guys feel that?
I'm just making
No.
sure that my
I
office is in
feel it.
order.
I felt it.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. It's over. Move forward. Okay. Second thing. That's my mentality.
It's not over in Long Beach yet. It's still shaking here.
It's here in Fallbrook.
My mentality.
Not in Walnut.
Yeah. See, everybody go to Walnut. Problem
No,
solved.
I mean it's shaking.
Oh, never mind. Don't go to Walnut. All right. Good stuff. All right. If anyone needs to evacuate or run, evacuate and run.
It was based in Beverly Hills, so that's why you guys are feeling it so strong.
That's right. Yeah, that's right by me.
Yeah, what?
It reminds me, I went to
Ground shaking changes coming to real estate.
Jack. Reminds me of I went to a bar one time. I know it's hard to believe that I've gone to a bar before, but there was a sign on the wall that said, "In case of earthquake, pay your tab and run like hell." So there you go. All right. So yeah, but again, all joking aside, if there's anything you got to take care of, they'll take care of this. We're recording this. All right. The other way you can pay a buyer's agent is you can advise the buyer's agent to submit their requested commission with the buyer's offer. So you could talk to your seller and say, hey, rather than offer a fixed amount like a percentage or a certain fee, we just make that negotiable. And you tell the buyer's agent, submit your offer with the submit your commission offer with the offer. Submit your commission with the offer. Which means, let's say the buyer's offering $800,000. You would submit an offer with $800,000 for the buyer with 2.5% to the buyer's agent or whatever the percentage may be. So that's another way that you could offer buyer's agent compensation. And then the third is you could advise the buyer to pay the buyer's agent commission. Okay, so which is obviously another option. So those are kind of the three options you're going to talk about with your seller in terms of compensating buyers. Questions at all on those three options?
I do have a question. I do have a question, Robert.
Go ahead, Marty.
It's Marty. Okay. If I take a listing and I do an addendum stating that the seller will pay the buyer's agent X amount of dollars, why can I not do that, or can I?
Jackie,
That's
Terry?
because that's what we've been doing. We've been taking, like, for example, I said, you're gonna pay me 5%, and then an addendum that you're gonna pay, the commission to the buyer's agent on a separate addendum.
I'm gonna stop just chime in on that because I work with Marty. So right now, before this MLS change on the 13th tomorrow, we obviously had the new listing agreement. So on those listing agreements that we've been taking since the one came out on 7th in July, we've been doing the listing agreement 5%, for instance, and then we do an addendum saying that the sellers is willing to pay 2% to the buyer's agent. But now that it's being officially removed off MLS tomorrow, is that still okay to do that with a written addendum so that the seller is in writing saying, yes, I'm going to pay a buyer's agent commission?
Okay, can I comment?
Yes, please.
Okay, first of all, remember, we have to watch out for antitrust. So when we talk about numbers, they're X, Y, Z. We can't use numbers in a group like we have right here. But to your question, regarding whether you can do it or not, yes, you can do it. There's nothing illegal about compensation to a buyer broker. Obviously CAR feels that we're going in the direction of not offering compensation anywhere to that side. So their contracts were designed and removed to stay in that direction. But is it illegal? Absolutely not. We can continue offering compensation to the buyer.
Okay.
Perfect, because you know what? I feel it's going to be up to a listing agent to fight for the buyer's agent. Without a good listing agent, the buyer's agents are going to get screwed. So my job is still to get commission to the buyer's agent.
Marty, I agree totally.
Would you recommend
it's going to take professional agents out there to stay with working as professionals.
Okay, would you recommend us writing, because right now we're collecting on the listing agreement, X%, the total commission, for an example, 5, and then we are offering the 2. Would you rather it be where we're taking the 5, offering the 2, or where we're off on our contract, we're putting that the seller is going to pay the listing agent 3% or X amount of percent, and on the addendum put the seller will be paying the buyer's agent the additional commission, as opposed to like splitting?
If you're doing that on an addendum, you can put whatever you want.
Okay.
But you can put
Shelley,
commission.
in my presentation, I prefer to just say 5%, and then this is what we're doing, because this way there's no question in their mind that they're not going to pay that total out.
Okay.
And then in the addendum, I put what we're doing.
That's
on an unrepresented.
If that's the way that you do business, there's nothing illegal about it. You just can't.
Perfect. Perfect.
We can
There you
This
go.
offer
way,
whatever.
this way, because
The
what's gonna
reason
happen
we're
when you,
doing
when
this
you don't,
is because the
you don't-
settlement said, and DOJ is really, really honest. DOJ is just looking for us to do something wrong. They're after us. So they're saying that we should not be participating in that buyer side at all.
That's
That's
right.
their viewpoint. But in doing business, if there's nothing illegal, that the seller can offer compensation.
That what Jackie just said, that's what I was leaning towards what you mentioned. So Marty and I will talk about that. Thank you, Jackie.
and Jackie,
Yeah.
I like presenting my 5% because this way there is no question later, because when they ask me what's changed, I go, nothing. I go, the only thing that's changed is I can't advertise in the MLS what we're gonna pay the buyer's agent.
Yeah.
That's
And
the
Can
only
I
thing
add
that's really
something?
changed.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
can I add something?
Yes.
We're
Go ahead.
not supposed, from what my brokerage told us, that we're not supposed to,
You're trying to reach is not available.
sorry
At
about
the
that.
tone, please record your message.
Use the word compensation
You may hang.
We'll
or
get
the
there.
word commission any longer. It
That's
should be
incorrect.
concession.
that's incorrect. It's not concessions.
no.
It's still commission. There's nothing illegal. We can still
No?
offer commissions.
No.
No.
Okay.
Incorrect.
Because
Well,
if you go to
'cause-
Facebook or Instagram, if you go to Facebook and Instagram, you can put the 2% commission to the buyer's agent,
You put X amount
Yes.
commission wherever you want it, except.
whatever you want to be, whatever you
MLS.
want it to be. Yeah.
Well,
Except
keep
for
keep in
MLS.
mind, keep in
Only-
mind for everybody on here too. On the closing statement, it's going to be shown as compensation commission paid towards the broker. So even if they're offering a concession, the closing statement is still going to show a commission or a compensation to the brokerage. So at the end of this, it's all going to be that way anyways. You cannot put commission or compensation on the MLS, which we'll get to. But in terms of the conversation with the seller, yes, you need to have that conversation of what commission or compensation are they going to offer a buyer's agent. So as Marty said, you could offer a fixed amount, just like many of you have always done, whatever that number is, and put an addendum and say, this is how much. Or you could, instead of a fixed amount, just make it negotiable with the offers, or have the buyer pay the buyer's agent commission. At that point, it's up to you as an agent. If, let's say, the seller wants to have the buyer pay the buyer's agent, it's up to you at that point on, do you want to try to get them to pay a buyer's agent? Do you want to take the listing? Do you want to have something in place? That's completely up to you. So, yeah, so there you go. Good questions. Words to avoid when discussing commission, though. These are words you have to avoid. Standard, usually, traditionally, typically, customary, normally, or anything related. So meaning that when you're talking about commission, you can't say, I charge a standard this. I charge a customary this. Okay? Things along those lines. That's really how this all started, was because we were using words like, I charge a standard 6%. And I would hear agents role play that. Well, number one, there is no standard. Everything's negotiable. And number two, I don't know what year it was the last time it was 6%. This is year 20 for me, and I know in 20 years it hasn't been 6%. So I don't know what data you're pulling where standard would be 6% in certainly our marketplace. So you can't use words like that. Those are the words that can get you in trouble, which I don't know why you would even use those words. Because if somebody said, how much do you charge in commission? You don't need to say I charge a standard or whatever. You just say I charge this. You don't need to add more verbiage to it. Okay. Anyone here seen the movie Ocean's 11, the remake with George Clooney and Matt Damon? Okay, not the old one with Sinatra. There's a line in there that's great for all of this. And it's when Brad Pitt tells Matt Damon's character, don't use 5 words when 3 will do. Okay, so when it comes to this kind of stuff, how much do you charge? Don't use 5 words when 3 will do. I charge this. You don't need to add any other words to it. That's where you're going to get in trouble. Okay. But yes, you can, but you need to have that conversation with your seller about the buyer's agent. What do you want to compensate them in terms of those types of things? I would recommend as well, just as a best practice, having some sort of system in place for people contacting you requesting the buyer's agent's compensation on your listings, especially if you're someone taking a lot of listings. I don't know how this is going to go. Maybe I'm overthinking this, But if you have a listing and the commission's not on the MLS, is it possible that you're going to get a number of buyer's agents calling you requesting what are you paying the buyer's agent?
Yes.
It's possible. So
Well,
you don't want.
you know what's frustrating? There's an agent that has listing in Glendora. It's already been 2 weeks ago that I called them because he said, look at the notes, and there's nothing in the notes. I called him 2 weeks ago. I called him twice. He's not returned my call. So this is what the poor buyer's agents are going to have to deal with. That is
Yes.
ridiculous and frustrating and
Yes, yeah, no,
unprofessional.
I agree.
But
So
isn't that steering though, Robert? I mean, why would the buyer's agent be worried about the commission firsthand? Wouldn't that be steering the buyers?
No, the great question, Lito. The reason they want to know is because they want to be able to have a conversation with their buyer who might not have any money to pay the commission.
But shouldn't they have an agreement already before they even call?
Yeah, they could, but let's say that you have an agreement. This is a great question. Let's say you have an agreement with your buyer and that you've agreed to pay 2%, but the agent says, don't worry, I'm going to work on getting the seller to pay that commission because the buyer might not have the money, which is in most cases the situation. So if I'm a buyer's agent, I might call the listing agent just to make sure that there's money for me to where my client doesn't have to come out of pocket because I know they don't have any money. So let's say I call you and you say, nope, buyer's in charge of paying the buyer's agent commission. I have to go back to my buyer to let them know, hey, FYI, you might have to come out of pocket the 2% on this listing, which they're not going to have. And then you're going to have that conversation with your buyer.
Well, but like this agent hasn't returned my calls. So you call them and they don't call you back. It's like, then I guess you just put it in the offer, but you already know what you're dealing with. You got an agent that's not calling you back, probably trying to double end it.
Yeah, I only have so
So
much power.
is there any way to call the board? I have a question regarding that. Is there any way to call the board and complain about that agent? What can be done?
You can call and complain as much as you want, and I wish you the best of luck going through that process.
No.
I have an example. I have an example, Robert, of this just happening to me. This is Rhonda. I was up in Northern California trying to help my son buy a house, and it's a different MLS company up there, so I didn't really have access to it. But I did call the agent and said, hey, are you guys paying commissions on this, or what is it, so I can write it up in the offer? And he's like, no, we're not paying commissions on it, so just submit your best offer. And I'm like, I'm not going to write up an offer and not get paid on it, But so I ended up, and that's one of the reasons why we call and ask, because some people are just not paying commissions, and I'm not going to charge my son commissions, The idea is to help him get the best deal, which I did negotiate the deal, but I didn't write it up.
Yeah. Well, remember too, everything is negotiable. So just because a seller is not offering a buyer agent commission doesn't mean you can't submit an offer with a buyer agent commission. This is important for everyone to hear. The whole point of this settlement is the word negotiable. That was the whole point of this. So you call and the seller says, no, we're not offering any buyer's agent compensation. Okay. I would still get in the game. If your client really likes that property, it's, hey, let's write up an offer with them requesting buyer agent commission. The worst they're going to do is counter us and say no, but let's at least get in the game. And if they don't have any offers, all right, well, at some point the seller's going to have to make some sort of changes, which is either lowering the price or offering a buyer agent compensation. So I would still get in the game. Doesn't mean that you have to go by that if they're not offering. Everything is negotiable. Okay, so remember that when you're helping out your buyers.
Hey, Robert.
Yeah.
Robert. Hey, Robert, a question.
Go ahead.
When you said that you meet with your buyer and they have to sign the agreement, right, with you as a buyer's agreement, and you need to put over there 2%, and they need to sign, but
X
you said that
amount,
you already,
please.
okay,
Can
no,
I trust? Can't say that often enough.
okay, excuse me. So if you put 2%, but like you said before, you already know they don't have the money. Is that okay for them to put the 2% and sign it knowing that they don't have the money? Is that legal?
So no, well, you can look, that's between you and the buyer to agree upon. But here's what's going to happen. Let's all be real here. You can put whatever you want that the buyer agrees upon, but most of the agents are gonna put a number on there and say, I'm gonna try to get that from the seller, and if I can't get that from the seller, then we can talk about that. That's what's gonna happen. So even though because here's the thing. Does anyone know what the average down payment is nationally?
8%.
8%. Elizabeth pays attention. 8%. Do you think people put down 8% because they like 8%, even though they have, another 15, 20% in their bank account? No. Most buyers do not have money to pay anything after down payment and closing costs. That's just the reality of the situation, unless you're doing multi-million-dollar homes, which we do some of, but we don't do a ton of. So every buyer's representation agreement, for the most part, is going to be hopefully based upon the seller paying that commission, because otherwise we'd all have a bunch of buyer representation agreements at 0%. Because most buyers can't pay anything. So to answer your question, Michael, it's not illegal. It's a conversation you have between you and the buyer on how much you're going to get paid. And you just have that conversation with the buyer. Look, this is what I'm going to request from the seller. And if the seller doesn't pay me this is a conversation you have to have with your buyer. If the seller doesn't pay me this, you got to make up the difference. Or, we can create some sort of an addendum that allow us to go with that ever lower amount maybe. But yeah, you could put, as long as you and the buyer agree to it, they sign it, and it's completely transparent, then it's fine. That's what contracts are for. It's all that stuff.
But isn't the buyer allowed to go, if they find out that the seller from you, that the seller is not going to pay for them to use their own agent, won't the buyer be more likely just to try to go direct to the listing agent? And aren't they allowed to do that now and make their own deal?
So two things to Jeanette's point. Number one is, if you have a buyer, that's the importance of getting a buyer broker agreement signed, because they can't go to another agent because you have that agreement signed.
Okay.
So there's that. But let's say prior to that, and the buyer says, I don't want to sign this agreement with all these other agents. They're charging me this percentage. I'm going to go directly to the listing agent and see what I can get done there. Yeah. And you know what? That's going to happen. Double lending is going to increase. I don't see a scenario where either dual agency, where you are representing, or unrepresented buyer goes to the listing agent. That's going to increase. And I mentioned this the last time we did this as well. I was at a meeting with Century 21, I don't know, a month or so ago, and this got brought up by one of the other brokers of saying, this is going to increase double lending. And that's something that a lot of boards have been trying to get rid of. And the lady, it wasn't a Century 21 lady, it was some lady that they say they're from Capitol Hill. I don't know what that means, but it sounds important. She just goes, yeah. It's like, okay. So yeah, it is going to increase double lending, thus the importance of taking listings. But that is going to happen. But that's why, as a buyer's agent, you need to make sure you're showing a lot of value to your buyers so they sign a contract with you. Okay. Understand something for everybody on here, and we're going to get to more of these rules. The NAR settlement took out one of the biggest objections we get working with buyers, which is what? What objection did they take away? Signing a buyer representation agreement. They took that away. Thank you. NAR. They took that objection away. They have to sign a contract with somebody. So think about it from this perspective. Okay, I'm a buyer. I have to sign a contract with somebody. I don't like signing contracts because nobody does. I still have the option of going to the listing agent directly. So if I'm going to sign a contract with you, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer's agent, you better damn well be able to convince me that I should do that. So what I recommend for everybody on this call, if you haven't done so already, is write out 3 to 4 value propositions as to why a buyer should sign a contract with you, and write it out in a way where you can articulate it to the buyer as to why that's important for them. Because if you don't have those value propositions, they're not going to sign a contract with you. Well, Mr. and Ms. Buyer, so you have to sign a contract with me to go see a property, and I'm going to charge 3%. Okay, great. Why should I work with you? Well, next. I'm going to go to the next agent because there's no shortage of agents. They go to the next agent. Why should I work with you? Well, next. All right, guess I'll go to the listing agent. You know what I mean? But if you can say, well, Mr. Buyer, that's a great question. Here are the top 3 reasons why somebody like you needs to work with somebody like me. Boom, 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 boom. Does that make sense? Sure does. Sign here. If you all can't do that, then this is going to be trouble. But if you can, you're going to make more money than you've ever made because most agents will not take any advice that I just gave. Go ahead, Jeanette.
Sorry. What would
It's all
be
good.
what would be the point of double ending though if our seller is not going to pay a buyer compensation? That would naturally send more people to the listing agent. That's not exactly a benefit, is it, if there is no buyer compensation?
Well, you could always negotiate with your seller and try to get something.
Okay,
You know?
even if it's
hey, you
not
know what?
on
You're
the
not going to pay it, but I'm going to represent both sides, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. And this is a conversation you should have at the listing appointment. You know, okay, if I end up representing both sides, I'm going to charge you an additional whatever. And it could be a percentage, could be a flat fee. It could be, hey, look, I'm going to charge you an additional $2,500 to pay for my marketing. Right? Like you could negotiate that with the seller to pay for something. If they're not going to pay for anything, what would be the benefit of it? Well, one, you get the deal closed. And if that's the best option possible, you got the deal closed, which is ultimately what you want from the seller. And, you know, for marketing purposes, you get the unit number so you can add that to your unit count. So things along those lines. So it wouldn't be necessarily a financial gain, but you at least got the deal closed and your seller's
Okay.
happy with you.
Oh, but we would be
I
allowed.
would make sure I got a really good review.
Okay, we would be allowed or encouraged at the listing appointment then to arrange for something in case it's a double end.
Yeah, just
Can
like
I
you do now.
answer
Go ahead,
that,
Terry.
Robert? Yeah, I was
Go
just
ahead,
gonna
Terry.
say that, Jeanette, in the new RLA, the new residential listing agreement, right below where you discuss with your seller what they're going to pay you and Century 21, the very next line down, it has a spot for unrepresented. And so it talks about that specifically. It says, if unrepresented, then you will pay an additional whatever you decide to put in there. So those numbers are negotiated up front. So if there's somebody that comes to the table that's unrepresented and things, it's the next thing then. It's part of the compensation block in that RLA grid.
Okay.
So
Thank
it's
you.
not even something you can skip over or forget to talk about. It's the very next item down.
Okay. Okay, good.
Okay.
There you go. There you go.
Can I say something
For you,
Hold on. Gabby, go ahead.
Terry. Why is responsibility of the sellers to pay for a buyer that they choose to be unrepresented? Why the buyer should be paying for that, not the seller? You know what I mean?
No, Gabby, I'm not.
Okay, well, you guys, we were talking that if a buyer choose to buy a property and say, I don't want a representation, somebody needs to provide for the paperwork, right?
Why?
Well, who's going to pay for I mean, if you are listing a house, and you're the listing agent, and I'm buying for you, and I say, I don't want to be represented, you're going to give me the paperwork, and that's it for free? And I do whatever I can with the paperwork?
Why would you give somebody the paperwork?
Exactly. If they're unrepresented, they're unrepresented. As soon as you start giving them CAR forms, you have taken on a position of some representation. And at that point, you either need to get something signed by them. Unrepresented would be somebody comes to you with LegalZoom.com purchase agreement and says, present this. And by law, we have to present all offers that come in. So if somebody wrote it on a large napkin or whatever, we could probably make a decision. But if they come in with LegalZoom and it's actually a purchase agreement, we have to present that.
Okay, so you as a listing agent, let's say that your seller accept that offer, okay, but somebody's unrepresented. you as a listing agent, you will have to provide me with seller disclosures? What are you going to do?
You have to provide them with seller disclosures,
I'm
but
in a
that's
meeting.
your representation
I'm
of
in a
the
meeting.
seller.
I was
I've
just
been in a
on,
meeting.
I was just on CAR Legal Friday, and they said that if a buyer does not have a contract, we can give them a CAR legal contract. We just can't advise them on how to fill it out. Anything that's in the best interest of our seller, that's what we do. And if that's going to be in the best interest, we give them the document, they have to fill it out. We can't guide them on anything, on inspections, on anything, other than when it's time for their time periods are up, you're representing the seller. You call them due.
We can
Okay.
give them a contract?
Yes,
Yes.
they made that clear this last Friday, that yes, we can. It's in the best interest of our clients. But
Okay.
I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wouldn't.
Okay,
So hold on. Let me
Yeah,
How
jump
go
in
many
for a
ahead.
times have you
second.
had
Let me
that
jump.
happen in our lives?
I don't
Yeah.
think it's gonna happen. I don't think we're gonna have
No,
it.
it's not
It's-
going to happen very often. That's why I
I
want
don't
to
think so.
put a pause here, because I don't want to spend too much time on what if scenarios.
Yeah.
But just so we're clear, unrepresented buyer, you can give them the form, but after you give them the form, you do nothing. How much, Robert? How much do you think I should write up an offer? I don't know. Write it up. Do you think that? What about continue? Well, I don't know. Write it up. Whatever you want. I am an order taker. You write. You can give them the form. They fill it out. You say, okay. You take it to the seller. This is what they said, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. Your seller can accept, deny, counter, whatever they want. But then when you go back, you again can't do anything. So let's say you open up escrow. The inspection comes through, which is a really exciting part because never anything goes wrong there. And the buyer says, well, look at all these things. There's 48 pages of stuff. I want all of this fixed. You can't say, well, you know what? Why don't we? Nope. You have to go, okay. And you walk over to your seller and you say, they want you to fix everything on all 48 pages. That's the deal with unrepresented buyer. You can give them the form. After you give them the form, you are just an order taker. You can't go, well, maybe. No, that is it. So you might want to consider two things with an unrepresented buyer. If I'm a listing agent and a buyer comes to me and they say, I want to submit an offer unrepresented, best practice. You know what, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, I'm assuming this is your largest financial asset, correct? Correct. Before you get into an agreement on their largest financial asset, let me take a minute to make sure you fully understand the difference between unrepresented and represented. Make sure they understand that. They say, I still don't want to be represented. I want to go to unrepresented. Okay, great. Have a conversation with your seller. Let me make sure this is an unrepresented offer. This one's a represented offer. Let me explain to you the difference between the two. So
Hey,
it's
Robert.
okay to have those conversations to make sure everyone is aware of the difference between represented and unrepresented. Unrepresented means you cannot do anything, nothing. Give them the contract and then get the hell out of the way. But again, as Terry said, we don't run into a lot of those, so I don't want to spend an inordinate amount of time on that. Okay.
Do we have a
commission
question? Robert, you keep saying give them a form. If they want to make an offer, why would we give them our card forms, or what form are you talking about? I'm confused.
You don't have to give them a car form if you don't want to, but you can.
Don't give them anything. Either they hire an attorney to write up the offer, right? Or whatever their choice of.
Yeah, you could do that. You could say, look, I'm not providing any forms. You want to be unrepresented, you go to, as Terry said, you go to LegalZoom, you do whatever you want, get the form yourself. But you can give them a form to write an offer. But they have to do all the fill in all the blanks themselves.
Hey,
So
Robert.
what form would that be?
The only thing that we can.
Oh, hold on. Okay, stop. I'm gonna pull rank here. We're moving on.
I mean, a minute, huh?
I'm pull enough on this scenario.
Yeah.
All right, commission on the MLS. Okay, you cannot put the words commission, compensation, BAC, or anything along those lines on the MLS. Okay, don't try to be sneaky. Okay, You can't put those words on there. Commission, compensation, BAC. Does anyone know how much the fine is if you get put on that?
$2,500.
$2,500. Do they have to give you a warning?
No.
No.
Much money.
No warning. Your listing's off the MLS and you get fined $2,500.
Robert,
Okay.
Buyer
Yes.
the AR said they notice little tricks that realtors do, like they'll put 3 bottles of wine on a counter. One of them will be laying down. So what do you think that 2 bottles of wine laying down?
2.5.
They also had a drone that went over a yard that had mowed into the
You're not gonna
lawn.
be able to do it anyway.
The percentage of commission that would be paid. So
Oh, that's wonderful.
But you can
realtors
give
are creative,
concessions
don't
to the
do it.
buyer, correct?
Yes, Steve. So we'll get to there in a second. So yes, don't try to be sneaky. Don't try. That's why I even said don't put BAC like some sort of initial. Like they won't figure that out. Like you can't put it on there. Okay, these are
Just
the
not the
rules.
MLS though, right? I mean, we can put a
Just the
tag on the
MLS.
key in the lockbox.
Yeah, I saw that
So,
on a
okay.
key tag in the lockbox. I saw that.
So this is a great point. Thank you. This is MLS purposes only. Now, Jackie, Terry, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is still one of the items that's up for interpretation, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But as of today, it can't go on the MLS, but it can go anywhere else. So on social media, if you want to post your listing in big, bold, bright red letters that says the buyer agent commission, you can do it. You can email out to all of your database. You can send emails to other agents. You can do any of that stuff. You can put it as a flyer inside an open house. You can put the commission anywhere else except the MLS. Everywhere else, as of this moment, is fine. Actually, what we're doing as a company is we're putting together a website that's going to have all of the company listings, active listings, with the buyer agent commission on there. So that way, not only internally will you be able to go see all the company listings with the buyer agent commissions, but we're going to make that public so outside agents can also go there and see the commission that you're offering on your listings as well. So as of today, you can put it anywhere you want. If that rule changes, I promise you, we will let you know. But that's the rule. But on the MLS, you cannot put anything. So as Jackie said, don't try to be sneaky about it. Now, to Steve's point, you can give concessions, but who must the concessions go to?
The buyer.
The buyer. Okay, so this is important. You can give concessions, so you can say, hey, look it, this is our way around it. We're not going to offer buyer agent commission. Instead, we're going to give 2.5% concessions to the buyer. Okay, that can go on the MLS. You can put concessions in the remarks on the MLS. Now, here's the thing. If you're representing a buyer, and that's the deal, they decide that we're going to go the concessions route. You can do that, but two things. Well, first of all, on the listing side, and Terry and Jackie, tell me if I have this wrong here, but to offer concessions, you have to get an authorization for that, right? MLSA, is that right?
MLSA,
okay.
And there's a spot for it, and then you have to include an addenda.
Okay, so make sure, and on that cheat sheet, we have that form labeled out for you. So you have to do that. Now, if you're representing a buyer and they go the concessions route, okay, that's fine. Here's what you need to do. Once you open up escrow, it's the buyer's agent. You have to inform escrow that the buyer's concessions will be used to pay the buyer's agent. That way, escrow can make the appropriate changes to the closing statement to show commissions being paid to the buyer's agent. Okay, so again, this is also on that cheat sheet. But if you're representing a buyer and the seller's offering concessions instead of commission, and the buyer's essentially using those concessions to pay you as an agent, you have to go to escrow once escrow's open to let them know those concessions are being used to pay you. Right? Otherwise, it's going to turn into a mess at the end. So make sure that you're doing that accordingly and correct.
Robert?
Go ahead.
So is the verbiage, in the agent remark, basically just saying that don't ask, just submit BA, like if I want them to submit the buyer agent compensation request with the offer, can I state that in the agent remark, or how should I word it?
You just shouldn't word it.
Okay, just don't word it.
And
Okay.
just don't word it. Don't even
Don't even
tempt it.
acknowledge it. Just
No.
let them bring
Yeah.
it to the table.
Yeah, just let the
So
buyer's agent.
just check the seller concession will be considered, and then leave it there.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's a concession, great. If it's a commission, that's fine too. And let the buyer's agent either contact you to have that discussion or just have them write up an offer with their commission that they're requesting.
I'm trying to not have them contact me on asking me that question. That's fine.
Okay, so well, this is what goes back. So this is what goes back to what I was going to say at the beginning. For those of you that take a lot of listings, or even if you don't, have as a best practice, have something in place where people can connect with you to find out what the commission that you're offering is without you having to connect with them. So, for example, if I have a listing at 123 Main Street, I'm going to make sure my autoresponder on my email says, "Thank you for contacting me. If your question is regarding the buyer agent commission on 123 Main Street, this is what we're offering." I would have my automatic text replies. "Thank you for contacting me. By the way, if you're contacting me regarding buyer agent commission on 123 Main Street, here's what it is." I would have my voicemail do the same thing. So that way I don't have to get back to people. There's an autoresponder that shows what the compensation is. Something simple and easy. Or Jack, for you specifically, I have a really good idea, Jack. You could have those calls go to Vivian.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Jack. Problem solved. Good coaching call. All
Robert,
right. Good job.
Can I throw something in there?
Terry, this is your show, baby. It's all you, buddy.
Wow. Do I need background music or anything? One thing that I want to say in all this commission discussion, it's all wonderful. I'm glad we're having it. I'm glad you guys are throwing out questions and things. Just remember that when it says commission is negotiable on any of the forms, and it says it on all of them, and it has for a long time, but it remains negotiable throughout the contract. So be careful of what you promise people. If you've talked with a seller that says they're willing to pay a certain percentage or a certain amount towards buyer's agent commission or whatever, and it's outside the MLS, which is perfectly legal, make sure that you have something in writing that says that they're actually going to pay that. Otherwise, somebody comes in with a purchase price that's a little bit less than what they have listed for and things. Now everything's negotiable again. So now we're talking about everything. So those numbers can change. So be careful about what you put down that says that this, or what you say on a phone, or what you say on your website or anything else, because you're marketing, which is a good idea to market, certainly. But make sure you have something that says, in fact, I was on the phone with Cindy just an hour before we were talking here, helping, we're trying to put together some verbiage that'll help you on some kind of an addenda that actually puts you in a position to kind of make that concession happen. So just be careful what you say about it, because it's negotiable throughout the contract.
Armin, go ahead.
So my question is, okay, let's say you fill out the listing agreement, you're in escrow, the buyer understands he's getting 2% concessions from the buyer's agent. What about when they do a home inspection, they ask for repairs? Do you adjust the concession thing on it? You know what I mean? Does that, how do you word it in a manner where it shows plus the concessions? Because it's all going to be concessions to the buyer, right? Since the buyer's paying the other agent.
Yeah, repairs would be negotiated outside, just like it is right now. Your repair request and your RRRR, that would be a negotiation outside of that.
Okay.
All right, good stuff. Good questions. All right, so that's a little bit. Okay, so I want to take a second here to talk about open houses, because this is something that's been rather confusing for many people, including myself on this one. All right, so let's go to open houses. I'm just going to share my screen so you can kind of see what the heck I'm talking about. Okay, so open houses. So here's the deal with open houses. We got clarification on this. An attendee is not required to sign any documentation in order to view the property and obtain any information sheets that are provided at the open house. Okay, so you're at the door, you're trying to get them to sign in. If they say, I don't want to sign anything, I just want to go view the house, they're not required to sign anything. They can go view the home. They can get, they call it an information sheet. It's a flyer. What are you going to do? Okay, they can do that. However, if they would like you to provide any information about the property other than what is on the information sheet, you must obtain a signed document of representation or non-representation prior to disclosing additional information. So I copied and pasted this directly from CAR. Okay. You obviously could tell this is not my writing. Right. This is much more intelligent.
Oh, I thought you were really getting good there.
No, they're like, wow, that doesn't sound like Robert got smarter. Nope. So again, anyone can go view the house at an open house. They don't have to sign something to go view it. They don't have to sign anything to get the information sheet. But as soon as they ask for any additional information, they have to sign one of the disclosure forms that we put on here, okay, which is open house non-agency disclosure or a limited property representation or a full buyer representation and broker. Okay, so any of those three would be okay if they request. So the example could even be, hey, what year was this upgraded? Is this house FHA eligible? Any question like that, that's additional information that's not on the information sheet. I've got to get you to sign this disclosure before we get into those discussions. Okay, but I want to clarify this because I know there's been some discussion. Even I was even told prior that no, anyone that goes into the house has to sign at least the open house non-agency disclosure. That's not the case. They can go, you could still ask them to sign in, but they don't have to sign in to go view the house. But you can't get into any other conversations about the house if they have questions unless they sign one of these agreements.
So, Robert, if I understand this correctly, if we're at an open house, buyer comes in, they don't want to sign, I'm walking around with them, they ask me questions, I got 3 forms with me. I'm going to ask them which one of these forms I should get them to sign before answering the question.
Yeah. So have an open house non-agency disclosure form or a limited property representation or full buyer representation. The most common one's probably going to be this open house non-agency disclosure because they're not signing a contract with you. They're just like, yes, I'm going to sign this so that way I can get my information. But yeah, they have to have one of those forms signed.
Cool. Perfect. Thank you.
So what I would recommend as a best practice for all of you, when you're working with a buyer, you go through your buyer consultation, you have them sign a buyer representation agreement. I would potentially have this open house non-agency disclosure. I would have a couple of those pre-completed to hand to your buyer in case they want to go see an open house on their own. Because on this disclosure form, there's a box that says, are you working with another agent? They check that box and they write in the agent's name. So I would have I would give some of these to my buyers pre-filled out. Are you working with another agent? Yes, Robert Hertel, so on and so forth. And say, hey, if for some reason I'm not available and you want to go see an open house, just provide this to the listing agent. They provide that to the listing agent. So now they're clear to go do whatever they want at the open house, ask whatever questions, and that listing agent knows that they're already working with another agent. And so they're probably not going to be prospected. So it's a best practice. You might want to do something like that.
I think it created more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that's the deal on the open houses. Pertaining to marketing flyers, what can we place on them? Price, year bill, death on the premises. Yeah, you can. I mean, anything you would market now on any sort of flyer, you could put the same thing. There's nothing on the flyers that's changed.
Robert, I have a question.
Go ahead,
Tim. The flyers. Thank you. Can we put the commission on the flyers?
Yes, just can't go on the MLS. So if you want to have a flyer and in the middle you have a bunch of stars with arrows pointing to it that says 3.0% buyer agent commission, have a ball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it can go anywhere except the MLS. Okay, you want to rent an airplane to fly around? you know, that says 123 Main Street, 3% commission, call Robert or whatever it may be. Have a ball. Okay. Anything except the MLS as of today. Because again, this is one of 14 things that are still up for interpretation. Go ahead, Martin.
So you know how on the listings, some of us have a scan QR code to a flyer.
Yeah.
Is that advertising if we put the commission on there? Because all you're gonna get is a scan QR code with a whole bunch of information. Is that
Is it
the
your
commission in there
flyer
or no?
or is it the flyer that prints off in the MLS? It's your flyer,
It's
right?
so basically when you scan the QR code, either at the listing or when somebody asks the information, I'll shoot you the QR code. You open it and you'll see everything about the house. Put the commission in there too?
But it's your information, right?
Yes.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
As long as it's not
Wouldn't be
in the
anything
house.
wrong with that.
Yep.
So can
Yep.
I chime in on this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
couple
Eddie.
things. If you've got a QR code, that means you've got a link. And in the private remarks in the MLS, you can put for additional information, for any information, click here. But they discourage links in the regular remarks because it'll take you away from the MLS. So you want to put it in the private remarks. And yes, you can take them to a website, to a flyer. It can say anything. We even had an agent that said, hey, when I'm reverse prospecting, I'm going to look up what agents have looked up my listing. I'm going to put them in my CRM. I'm going to shoot them my flyer. I'm going to email them my flyer that has my BAC on there. So another quick way to get the information out there. So there's absolutely nothing saying you can't do that.
There you go.
Hey, Robert.
All right,
Robert.
real quick. Hold on one second. Real quick. I want to get to some of these questions. Hold on one second, Michael. Terry, Jackie, quick question because I think this is a good one. How will you handle a phone call about your listing from a buyer?
What do they want?
Yeah, I guess I would listen to what they had to say and what their questions were. I don't
And
think
if they
they'll
want to go
ask you-
see it, then you're going to have to get a relationship of some kind.
Yeah.
So buyer calls and they say, hey, I have some questions about your listing, right?
Yes.
Okay. You can say, what questions do you have? You know, answer whatever basic information about the property. But if they want to go see the property, then they have to get something signed. But you don't need to get anything. You don't need to send them anything to have the conversation.
Not to just talk to them.
No.
Okay.
So it's
There you
my
go.
understanding, it's my understanding that we can, the difference between a customer and client, a customer, we can give them any information that they could find publicly. They could find it on Zillow, they could find it wherever. We can give them that. But if they're a client, we have something signed by them. And then we can tell them like what the comps are, what more specifics about the property, that kind of stuff, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that pretty much covers it. Yeah.
Can we put in the private notes to check our website for any buyer supplements?
No, not
No.
well, depends on what you put in there. If you just say check our website for additional information,
That's
then
fine.
you could do something like that, but you can't identify specifically what they can go there to look for.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, Robert.
Yep. Go ahead, Michael.
You know, the question is this, the main challenge here with these changes was that we are not going to be able to offer commission on the MLS anymore, the VAC. You said that you can put on the remarks how much concessions the seller is willing to pay, or maybe you can put that. Don't you think the agents are going to use that since it's already okay to put concession as a kind of understanding that it's going to be like a commission? They will understand it's going to be money for you guys.
They might, but I'm not banking on too many agents doing that because I look at, here's the thing. I don't know. We'll find out. I don't think that's going to be that big of a thing. I think most agents are going to have conversations with their sellers about what to pay a buyer's agent. Some of them will offer concessions, some of them won't. I don't think a lot of them are going to go the concessions route because I don't think a lot of them really understand how that's all going to play out. You know, because like I just said, like I just said, is if it is concessions, you as a buyer's agent have to go to escrow and make sure you tell escrow as soon as escrow's open that these concessions are going to pay the buyer's agent. I guarantee you there's not many other offices that are telling their agents that, what I just told you, which is going to cause a giant cluster, which is why the concessions thing probably won't be as very, very popular. And I'm not saying that from bragging from my standpoint, because I didn't know that answer until Jackie told me. Okay. But my point is that it's, I don't think a lot of people are going to offer the concessions because they don't really know how that's going to work. But we'll see.
Don't you just
This is
send the BRBC to send the BRBC to the escrow, right? That's how
Okay.
escrow knows.
Yeah, if I were doing that, I would open an escrow, or when I do that, I'll open escrow and I will send the last page of the BRBC with the rest of my packet, because the last page, the reason they doubled down and put the compensation on there again on the last page is so that you wouldn't have to give the entire representation agreement to anybody. All you have to do is take the last page that has the compensation agreed to.
So if I cap the buyer's compensation, if the listing, we're not getting anything from the seller, and I put a cap on the, I can put in the first page, whatever, other than the last page, and then they're not going to see it.
Yeah, the first page, that's all the time that you're going to give to it and what other properties might be identified and things like that. But the last page identifies only confirming the compensation.
Okay. Thank you.
Once you make an appointment with a listing agent, do you need to provide some type of proof that you have a broker buyer agreement, or do you need to email it to them, or is it just something verbally? I'm representing the buyer, and then you just schedule the appointment.
Well, they should get a copy because they signed it. You should send them a copy of it.
Why would you send a copy to show a home? I mean, it's our responsibility, not the listing agents.
Okay.
No, the BRBC you would include in your offer, but no, the question was to the buyer.
No, to the listing agent. Once you make the appointment, you need to show some type of proof, or
it's assumed that you have a BRBC because you shouldn't
You
be
only
showing
have
the
to
house without
present
one.
that when you present your offer.
Yeah,
right.
That only becomes part of their paperwork then.
Right, but just to clarify too, just because I know this question gets brought up sometimes, if the house ends up getting shown, if that person who shows the house didn't actually have a buyer's representation agreement, it doesn't come back on the listing agent. So it's not the listing agent's duty to make sure that this agent is showing a buyer with a proper buyer representation agreement. I just want to clarify that because this question got brought up by someone else the other day too, of like, oh, do we have a duty as a listing agent? No. If it turns out that they don't have an executed buyer representation agreement, that's between that's on the buyer's agent. That has nothing to do with the listing agent. It's not your duty to know that stuff.
Can I ask a question, Robert?
Go
This
ahead.
is Gloria. Okay, so did I hear that every time you write an offer, you have to provide a copy of the BRBC to the buyer? I thought that buyer was already given a copy in the beginning.
Right. It has to be submitted with your offer to the listing agent and the seller. The last page of the BRBC needs to be submitted on your offer to the listing agent.
If you're asking for permission, if you're not, then it doesn't matter. Right?
On the offer, Jackie, Terry, confirm this. On the offer, it has to be submitted.
Right. When you present an offer,
when you present an offer, the last page of the buyer representation agreement has to be submitted with the offer, not to see the property, but with the offer.
It has a percentage amount on it, and they just recently removed all the buyer information. So that was, as of Friday, there were 5 changes made on 5 different forms, and that was one, buyer's off. So this is going to be an ongoing.
Yeah, wait till this Friday. There'll be 5 more. They're already talking about a couple.
Right. And we got
there you go.
Some coming in for ours.
I saw something on the.
May I ask?
Hold on. Let Eddie go.
I saw something on the flyer that you sent out earlier where it says that you can amend your compensation. Is that so? Let's say I go with the buyer. I put I'm charging you 2%, but then I call a listing agent. They say, well, we're compensating 2.5. Can I, before sending the offer, can I amend that to 2.5?
Yes.
That X and a half, yes, you can amend. Don't
The
use
what?
it.
I'm sorry.
X and a half.
Yes, you can amend that, whatever that amount is.
You would have to
Jackie's
present
making
your
sure we're
amendment
not getting in any
along
trouble.
last page.
So whatever that X amount
That
is, yes, you
is.
can amend it.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
May I ask?
Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead.
Thank you, Robert. And hey, guys, I just want to say, number one, thank you guys for your time. This is a lot of work you guys have done, and there's a lot to it. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you guys digging into this for us. So I've had conflicting answers to this. Representing a buyer, I charge 2.5%.
X and a half
The seller,
percent.
I'm sorry, I X.5% or X%. The seller is offering X plus 1%. Where does that plus 1% go?
It's a seller's
that
money.
overage.
It's a
It goes
seller.
back to the
It's not
seller.
overage. It's seller's money. We never know about it. It's belongs to the seller.
Yeah, it doesn't technically go back to the seller. It's just the seller never has to pay it.
Yeah.
Right.
And it'll
Right.
just be reflected on the settlement statement
Right.
as whatever
It
you had
says,
written.
Well,
like your
and I
first
think
slide.
I think it's important to note that the conflicting information, because I was right there with you, Tim. I was getting that too, and I was given that information. That was before the modification specifically to the BRBC came out. So once that modification of terms specifically for the BRBC came out, then that made it negotiable. So let's say Jackie, Terry, I go and I call an agent and go, hey, I've already negotiated just a 2%, but they're offering 2.5%. Could I use the modification of terms and up adjust it to 2.5?
You mean the X point?
The X point, yes.
We're gonna get so much trouble. Stop doing this.
It's okay, we're in the same brokerage, so it's not as big a deal.
No, we have other people that are not in our.
Oh, we
brokerage.
do? See, I
That's
didn't,
the problem. Yeah.
I thought we were all Century 21 masters.
No, unfortunately, we're not. So it's okay. So you're saying if you negotiate it outside with the agent, the number that you want, and it's more than what you have agreed to for your buyer,
Correct.
you can do a modification of terms.
Right.
It's
So, Tim, to
negotiable.
answer your question, it doesn't have to go to anybody. You can up adjust your
If they've said
commission.
this is what we're offering, and even though you've got on your buyer contract, you can modify your buyer contract to that amount.
So that was a big change once they came out with that modification of terms specifically for the BRBC.
Or the BRBC.
Yes, that
But
one.
I can
that
tell
was-
you right now, these things are gonna change, so don't get its mindset that this is it. It's in, there's more to come.
Hi,
So,
Jackie. I have a
Vanessa,
question.
go ahead.
Okay, Jackie. So I know things are changing, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie. So when I sent the RPA in starting tomorrow, is the G318 on the RPA changing? Where it says, yeah, G318 on RPA, where it says sellers agrees to pay the obligation. Is that still staying or is it
still there.
changing?
That's
Okay,
still there.
so when I submit my offers, that automatically generates the SPBB, right?
Right.
So that protects my buyer, my buyer concession when my offer gets accepted, correct? Do I still have to worry about, because in the SPBB, I add 2% or I add 3%. Now, if they accept my offer, that means they accept the SPBB because the seller's signature is there.
right.
Do I have to worry about adding an addendum or anything else?
Yeah, if you've got a buyer's that says different than that, yes, you have to amend the buyer. Remember, the buyer has to be informed, they have to be agreeable to it. So just because the seller says, I'll pay you more, doesn't mean that the buyer's okay with that. So
No,
yeah,
yeah. So sorry about that, Jackie. So I'm asking the seller 2%, right? And I'm disclosing this to my buyer. Okay, I'm gonna get the sellers pay me the 2% as they agreed upon because they accepted your offer. As long as I'm disclosing it to the buyer, I am okay, correct? And the seller already signed the RPA and opened escrow.
Right.
So
If
we're
everybody's agreed to it, it doesn't matter.
okay. All right.
Fine, you
That was my
buyers
concern.
signed for it. You've amended his. It's in escrow. Everybody's agreeable to getting that amount fully disclosed.
Okay, so that was
Negotiable.
one thing I was worried about, that was going to change in the offer starting tomorrow, but good thing it
No,
stays. Okay.
no, that's not one of the changes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, real quick, I want to get back to one of these questions here. It says, if we're the listing agent, we find a buyer who does not want to pay the commission on their side and unrepresented, and the seller is not willing to offer additional commission for representing the buyer, what steps should we take? So first of all, you need to make sure you have that conversation with the seller at the listing appointment for what compensation you'll be getting if you're representing the buyer, whether it's a represented buyer or an unrepresented buyer. So have that agreement up front, so that way you have some sort of compensation with the seller. If the seller at that conversation, the seller says, no, I'm not paying anything. If you want to represent the buyer, then you need to talk to the buyer about the buyer paying you. Then that's what you do. You go to the buyer and you talk to the buyer, whether they're unrepresented or, well, you talk to the buyer about being represented and offering some sort of compensation. If the buyer doesn't want to pay, then that's really up to you at that point. You can either take the deal or decline it from a buyer's perspective to say you've got to come up with some sort of compensation. But that's why it's important you have this conversation with your seller at the listing appointment. So that way, if it's, hey, if I represent the buyer, here's the additional amount of money that I'm going to charge. So that way you're getting something out of it. Because that's the deal, folks. Again, going back to the beginning, this is not a best practice. This is reality. Most buyers do not have money after down payment and closing costs to pay a commission. So if you're trying to get money from the buyer, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. Not impossible, but tough, especially if you're trying to get a bigger amount. A couple thousand here or there, maybe. That's why you got to have these conversations with your seller up front about, hey, if it's an unrepresented buyer, I'm going to charge you an extra whatever percentage. If it's dual agency and I'm representing the buyer, I'm charging you this extra amount. That way you have that conversation and you don't have to come down to it. Otherwise, you're kind of you're a lot of times you're gonna be stuck because a buyer might not have, they might be going to you because they don't have any money to pay a buyer's agent. So what are you gonna do? If you don't have now here's the key though. Here is the best practice. If you want multiple offers, price it correctly. And then that way you don't have to deal with unrepresented buyer offers or anything like that. Just price it correctly and you'll get enough offers to satisfy what you need to be satisfied. But that's the tough part of it. Jake, go ahead, buddy.
Robert, about open houses. If we hold an open house for some other broker, any thoughts on how we handle that?
To my knowledge, Jackie and Terry, Eddie, feel free to add on this. To my knowledge, it's the same thing. They have to sign. They can still come in, but if they want to ask you more information about that particular listing, then they have to sign one of those disclosures.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Go ahead, Jake.
So
I was looking through the Form 08 open house visitor non-agency form, and it says all acts of the agent at the open house are for the benefit of the seller. So I don't know if we can.
That's correct.
Right.
So
that's why you let people in, because it's to the benefit of the seller to let people in. But if they have additional questions, then they still have to sign one of those disclosures.
So we don't need any agreement with the seller, the other brokers.
If you're doing it, I'll be honest
it would
with
be
you,
enough.
the DRE really frowns on that happening, going to another broker and having an open house at their seller. It's not encouraged at all. So
I think maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's referring to doing open houses for
The
people
masters?
within our own brokerage.
Well,
Yeah,
even if it's not, it should be the same thing.
Outside, Jake?
I'm sorry, Terry?
Are you doing them for agents
outside
that work for our brokerage, or are you doing them for outside brokerages?
outside.
Hmm.
And I think maybe there's no written agreement needed because they invite me to do that. They confirm it somewhere in a email, but I don't know that I'm working for them if I.
Yeah, so nothing's changing there if I could. Sorry, guys. But you do definitely want to have a couple things. One is the sign-in sheet for everyone. And I did see a comment on the in the comment section that said, so no reason to have a BRBC with you. No, you do. What we're talking about here is someone who absolutely refuses to sign. You've all been there. You've had an open house and people avoid you. They won't even make eye contact with you. They want nothing to do with you. You're not going to, put them in a submission hold and make them sign anything. You're not. We don't want to put anybody in danger. We don't want you to physically, impede someone from coming in. That's not smart. And when you're representing the seller, that's not a good idea. You want them to see things, but they will inevitably have some questions. And if they do, say that's a great question. In order for me to answer that, I would need for you to fill out this form, whether you want me to represent you or not. So one big thing, just because you guys got me going on a tangent, I would recommend that either you have the BRBC or the limited representation agreement either printed. If you have your laptop, pull up your car forms. If you have an iPad, Glide is a good app to have on your iPad, and all you have to do is get it filled out right then and there, and then just keep exporting them and saving them onto your device so that you can upload them later. And if you have a Samsung device, whether it's a tablet or phone, the Zip Forms Mobile is a really good app to have. That way you're not having to print everything. If you don't have a printer there handy, you can just have that available and then just save these. Because we've been talking about this, like, oh, how do I get a QR code at my open houses so I don't have to? Well, the best way is to have them there digitally, and those are some of the options that you guys have.
Hey, Robert.
Thanks.
Hello, Robert. I have
Yeah,
a
go ahead.
question. As a listing agent, if an unrepresented buyer come and they say, I want to talk to the seller to negotiate, can we allow them to give me the information so they can go to the seller to talk to them? Or we tell them that we are the listing agent, they need to talk to us?
Yeah, talk to you.
That second part is the right answer. You're representing the seller. They need to go through you.
Okay.
Agency is.
Yeah. All right. Real quick, I want to highlight a couple things, and just to make sure we sent this out via email as well, but just in case you all don't know, you all probably got this from CR as well, or MLS as well. So the fines, because here's the big thing. I want everyone to understand something. We're all learning this together. So there's no brokerage out there that's got a leg up on you or has more information. As a matter of fact, they probably have less because they don't have us. Okay. But we're all learning this together. So here's the main thing. You'll learn this as you go, okay? Because there will be more changes. But you learn faster by getting involved in transactions, okay? So don't stop lead generating because of this. But here's the thing. Don't get fined. So here's the stuff you absolutely have to know so you don't get fined, which is this, right? $2,500 fine. Offering or conveying a buyer's agent compensation MLS, insufficient disclosure of compensation, disclosure of listing broker's compensation, so on and so forth. Don't do those items and you won't get fined. Everything else, we're going to figure it out. Some of you are too stressed. Some of you are way too stressed. Okay. Don't get fined. The rest of this, we're all learning this together. As a company, we're learning together. The other agent that you're going to be working on a deal with is learning it together. You might go to the other agent and say, hey, do I need to submit this document? And they might go, I don't know. Right. And then they're going to go to their broker and you're going to go here. And we're all going to figure this out together. Don't get fined. This is the immediate fines. Don't do that. Everything else, we're going to figure it out. Okay. But some of you are just way too stressed on this. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. I got to jump. I'll let Terry and Jackie answer more questions, but I want to leave you with something here. And I'm going to talk about this as the connect. just on this stuff. Mike Meadler, again, I was with him last week, and he said something really interesting. He talked about how many times there's been interference in our industry that we thought was just going to be the end all be all to everything. And he talked about how back in the 50s, there was no such thing as a buyer's agent. It was just the listing agent. And if you help the listing agent close the deal, you got a fee. So the government stepped in and boom, buyer's agents were born. It's like, okay, we adapted. He talked about how in the 90s, they got rid of the MLS books and everything had to be online. And it's like, okay, well, different world. Boom, everything adapted. And then in the 2000s, with the technology boom, all the listing information had to be accessible to the public. So online resources were born. Okay, change the industry. We were okay. There's companies like Help You Sell. Remember Purple Bricks, right? Companies like that that were supposed to just come in and take over the industry with their low fees and all this stuff. And we adapted. Those companies are gone. Even companies like Zillow or Redfin, we're going to take over the world. And they have such a low percentage of market share. Okay. And we adapted. iBuyers. Remember how iBuyers 4 or 5 years ago were supposed to just take away real estate agents? There was never going to be a need for real estate agent. How many iBuyer programs are still out there? Right? COVID happened. How many new disclosures did we have to have with COVID? Do we need to wear masks? Do we need to wear booties? Do we have to get this signed? We adapted, and then guess what? It was the biggest year of real estate in history. So this is just another change that's happened countless number of times throughout our world in real estate here. We're going to be all right. You got to adapt and move forward. Okay, don't get stuck in all the nuances of it. We're going to learn this together. This is all part of the rhythm, and we've adapted every single time and gone on to do really big things. But you just have to, you got to go with it and then move forward, move forward, move forward. Go find a deal, figure it out. Go find a deal, figure it out. This is not new in terms of changes happening to our business that are supposed to disrupt it. Don't get too overwhelmed with all this stuff. Okay. We gave you a cheat sheet. You have an amazing group of people here to answer all your questions. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. And when you run into that moment where you're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I don't even know what to say, give me a call, give Eddie a call, Jackie, Terry, something like that. We're going to be all right. But we adapt. We adapt. Okay. So look, I got to run because I got a 1:30 appointment. But Jackie and Terry, if you all want to stick around and answer more questions, you're more than welcome to. We're going to talk about this more and more constantly. Okay. But we're here for you, but it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right.
Robert. Thank you so much, Robert.
Go ahead. Quickly.
Thank you so very much. But I never got the email with the cheat sheet. Can you email it to me, please?
I'll send it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And then if y'all have more questions for Eddie or Jackie or Terry, if they want to stay on, they can. If they want to disappear, never come back ever again, that's up to them too. But I do have a 1:30 appointment.
Okay.
Bye, Robert.
Jackie, I have a quick question.
Okay, let's get back to work.
Question.
Go ahead, Sandy. Martin, you're still unmuted.
Okay, thank you, Eddie. My question is, I have open house this weekend, so I came in late. And what should I bring over there, and how can I know that they need to sign in if they ask all the questions? You say you need to sign a different form. What kind of form do they need to sign before answer all those questions?
Depends on the question. I mean, if they're asking for you to be their agent, there's one for that. There's one for limited. So it really depends on how much they want from you.
What kind of
Are
form
they represented? First thing you want to ask, Sandy, is are they represented by another agent? Most importantly, have you signed any other contracts, buyer broker contracts? Very important, because they're starting out new as buyers. They don't know that this is going to tie them to an agent for 90 days or 30.
Okay. If they sign the contract with the other agent, so I cannot answer any question regarding the property, even I'm the listing agent?
Correct. You can ask them to have their agent contact you.
Yeah. Okay.
Represents them.
Represent. Okay. Got
And
it.
that goes back to what Dulce said, which is you can answer any questions that is available to a public, because at the end of the day, they're not your client, but they're still a customer.
Can handle a flyer. Have a flyer, hand them a flyer.
So give them a flyer, that's all. Okay,
Normal.
thank you. Thank you, thank you. Appreciate that. I'm gonna have 2 days weekend open house, so that's why I need to know more about that before.
Good luck. Sell the house.
No,
Sell
good.
that
Good
house.
luck.
Hi, Jackie. One last question. It's Vanessa.
Thank you.
Hi, Jackie. So with this, I'm sending a buyer's counter offer. Is it okay to still use the verbiage? Should I use concession, buyer's agent concession? I know it starts tomorrow, but I just want to make sure, it's okay to use that in buyer's counters.
Sure, you can still call it commission, concessions, however
okay.
you want to. I mean,
Okay.
remember this big thing about compensation and commissions is MLS.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie.
We can talk any way we want about commissions, other than percentages.
Got it.
That's
Thank you. That
antitrust.
makes me feel more at ease. Thank you, Jackie.
You're welcome. It's not against the law.
Jackie, when you have a minute, can you call me? It's Emma. I need to review
Oh.
something with you.
Certainly.
As soon as you're done.
I'm going to be done shortly because I have another appointment to go to, so Terry can take over. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, Jackie.
Did you say?
Bye.
Hi, Terry, are you taking over?
Taking over what?
Hello?
I'm still here.
Terry was in charge from the beginning, to
The
be
Zoom?
clear.
Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Back to the in charge. Terry, I have a question. I have a listing and someone called me up saying they want to make an offer, but they want to make it themselves. So I asked, but as I told them, what's the reason you're not representing?
You're kind of cutting in and out. Are you walking around a room or?
Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm driving. Can you hear me?
Okay. All I heard, I don't know
I'm
what
driving
anybody
toward
else
going
got.
to my listing. Oh, can
Try
you hear
turning off
me?
your video. That might help.
Is it better?
Or turning into a parking lot.
Is that better?
Yes, go ahead.
This call.
You'll have to call me on the phone or something, Agnes, after you get done. We're only hearing 1 out of 10 words.
All right. Any other questions?
I don't have a
have
question, but
one.
I have a comment that I think we need to throw out to everybody. If you have we've had people ask about listings that are already there. You already have a listing, you took it in July or something like that. It's already posted, all those kind of things have taken place and you have everything in there. And as of tomorrow, commissions are all going to be scraped and things. So we're not going to have any compensation in there anymore. There is a DM-LA that is one of the new forms that they popped out. That's a disclosure and modification to the listing agreement. And we are supposed to get those signed because it re-identifies things that were not identified in the RLA before. And it talks about commissions and offering compensation and how the NAR and DOJ settlement made us change how we do that. And we're supposed to have, according to CAR legal, we are supposed to have one of those signed and in our files. And so I would take a minute it'll actually give you a chance to talk to some of your clients again. It's called it's disclosure and modification to listing agreement. DM-LA. And we're supposed to get those signed according to CAR for anything that we currently have listed. And we need to get those signed we don't need to get them signed for anything listed for tomorrow and beyond because they'll already be included. But for anything that's already listed, we're supposed to get that out and let them know. There's also a multiple listing service addendum that the MLS has encouraged us to take care of. It's an MLSA. And you heard Robert or Eddie, somebody alluded to that earlier. And that talks about the impact of the commissions and things. It also has people kind of re-agree to the fact that they have offered out 3% or 2.5% or 2x5 times the third, whatever that happens to be, whatever commission they've offered out, it has some kind of re-agree to that. And so it's a couple of, could be potentially important forms for you if you ever ran into any issues with people trying to unnegotiate or renegotiate commissions and things, which is still possible, but it just lets them know how the commission new system works.
Terry, what was the
Terry,
one you
regarding
said
that,
right before the MLSA?
The one before that was the DM dash hyphen, yeah, LA, disclosure and modification to listing agreement.
And that's what we have to get signed before tomorrow on any existing listings.
Yes. Or soon. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
there's not going to be lawsuits and grievance coming down on Thursday or something like that, but it's just something we're supposed to have done.
So
All right.
Tim, this is Sandy. So
Hi, Sandy.
all the old listing agreement must be signed. We signed by DMLA agreement with the seller.
Yes. And anything that you already have listed, if I understood the question, anything that you already have listed, you have to give them the modification because the items in the modification are not addressed in the old listing agreement.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
So is it safe to say, Terry, that's anything listed prior to 7/24? Because 7/24, the new RLA was already out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said July, if you listed something July 17th or something like that. So that's a good way to sum it up.
Yeah, that said the CR form was if it was the 1223 version and before, if your listing agreement had the 1223 version, you had to use the DMLA form. You had
Yes.
to incorporate that because that was the last time it was revised.
Yes, good point.
Yeah.
can be negotiated when you present the paperwork to the sellers. Can you renegotiate the commission, or is going to be it has to keep going with the same that you agreed the first time?
Well, this one is just identifying that the terms of the current contract are kind of going to be moved forward. You can
Okay.
always renegotiate it sometime during the course of the deal. You just have to do it with modifications of time and terms.
Hi, Terry, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Does this apply to lease listing or no?
No, not
Okay.
yet, but brace yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. They'll get us everywhere here pretty soon.
Well, I do have a listing right now, so I listen residential listing, so that's why I'm asking.
No, everybody just go out through the next little while, just go out and take lease listings and commercial property listings. They don't apply to any of those, so.
Okay, thank you.
Terry, I have a seller that, he's told me I'm not gonna sign anything. No more modifications, no more nothing. That's it.
Okay.
So-
You have a current agreement with him though for something?
Yes, I have my listing agreement and he's agreeing to pay the buyer's agent. Everything is fine. But if I ask him to sign additional paperwork, he's like, I'm not signing nothing.
Well, you can't make anybody sign anything. They have an agreement that's in place right now until I don't know when it expires, but they have a listing that's in place right now. This is just to provide them extra information and to move forward. If they're not going to sign it, they sound like a real cooperative client that's probably going to give you grief further down the road. But we can't make them sign it. But we do have an agreement that still is in place.
So just document that in an email,
Yeah.
you refuse to sign this.
Yep, that'd be a good idea. Seller refused to sign.
Okay.
And then tomorrow I have a meeting with Jan, actually, and Colleen, our compliance people, to go over some of these things. And so but we may come back with even more information because compliance always wants to get involved. So we'll figure it all out, though. Robert was right when he was giving us his closing address and getting ready to leave or whatever he was doing. And that is that we're on top of this every single day. There isn't a day that goes by, including today, an hour before we had this meeting come on. I was on the phone with CAR Legal, talking about a couple of things. And we will continue to do that. And anytime we have a new form or a new anything pop up, I get notified of it. I've actually been on the Standard Forms Advisory Committee for quite a while and on the board of directors for CAR. And so I get everything that's happening, I get noticed of. And we'll try to figure out how to squeeze it into our system and we'll work it out. Thank you.
Terry, I had a question. Sorry, I'm not sure if I missed that part. I had to step out, but when a buyer comes to an open house and they are signed with an agent, so when we ask if they're signed with an agent, do they still have, I mean, do we, if they're not signed with an agent, we ask them to sign one of those 3 forms that, like the open house or whatever, the 3 forms. If they are signed with an agent, we don't answer any questions and we don't have them sign any of those forms.
Yeah, there's one form in there that says that they're already represented. If they'll sign that, that's fine. If they don't, it's like anybody else that comes to the door. You let them in, but you don't give them any information. If they start asking your questions, then you can just refer them back to the agent that they're represented by.
Okay. And with the listing agreement, if the listing agent gives the buyer the forms for them to fill out themselves, isn't it all the listing agent information on the bottom? Like it doesn't matter, huh? On the bottom of the forms, it's all the agent information, like the phone number.
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
The listing agent, the listing forms, why would you give them listing forms?
No, the buyer purchase agreement.
The buyer purchase agreement?
Yeah, if they ask for it, you can give it to them, as you guys said, but
Yeah, that was something that they just came up with about 2 days ago, because that has not been the rule for a long time, because it still identifies the representing company down at the bottom. And so that was surprise to me when they said that we could give them form to purchase, because we've never been able to do that in the past. Because it does still have, you're right, it still has all our representation on the bottom and things. And so I don't know if that would ever hold up if it got to court. It's like, who provided the information? Well, I did, but I didn't provide him anything else. And I'm not sure we'd have very firm ground to stand on when it comes to that. But you're right, it does identify it at the bottom, and you can't take the time to white it out or anything. And I guess you could go through CAR's forms to try to change it and make it blank or whatever and say unrepresented, but your identification will be there.
thank you. And I have one more question I forgot.
Terry, coming back, the question that Sheikh asked regarding doing open houses for some other broker. Is it still okay to do it? Or you don't
want
recommend
Terry's answer, or do you want the legality?
I want both.
Terry's answer is that, no matter what you do, you are representing and creating a certain liability for Century 21 Masters. And Randy is ultimately responsible for anything you do, including holding open houses for people and things. And if you were out holding an open house and heaven forbid something were to happen, liability is always an issue. And at least we're covered if we're within our own company bounds. But I'm not sure how anything would hold up in court. In fact, I know how it has held up in court before. And that is that everybody becomes a responsible party, including Century 21 Masters. If anything happens, or if anything were to go wrong, or if they felt like they got misinformation or something was misrepresented to them, the risk management part of that is way exceeds the reward.
How are you only wondering about this now?
Okay.
Does that
Okay.
answer the question at all?
It does, yeah.
So it's like that's the legal part and the Terry part.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Thank you, Terry. No, Randy, Terry.
So
Hi.
couple things. If I mean, and I think that because the liability falls on the listing company, I think it's safe to say do not let anybody from another brokerage host an open house for you. If there is going to be outside, it's like what Jake is doing. Jake is hosting open houses for other companies, but the liability, it really is with the listing company. And so the minute you hit a listing, you start getting phone calls, right? You get text messages. Hey, can I host an open house? No, I've got plenty of people within our brokerage that will do it. Thank you so much. Have a nice life. Right. So my answer is always no, because we have such a big number of agents that I can literally put it on Telegram and I'll have somebody to host an open house almost every weekend. I mean, we've had it to where it's like ridiculous how many open houses we can I just call Jake. He'll do it. He'll do it for me, right, Jake?
No,
I'm
no,
available.
my
Yeah.
question was the opposite. Because I
Yeah.
have relationship with some agents that are not part of the brokers. They are not part of the C21. And sometimes I do open houses for them. So if I can do open houses for them. I know that some brokers, they don't allow it. And I asked a few months ago to Jackie, and she asked Randy it was okay, but I don't know if it has changed it or not. So
Right.
the
Well,
ideal
we
thing that would
don't
be
want that.
not keep it
We
in the
don't want
house.
anybody else doing open houses for our listings.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for me, doing open houses in somebody else's listing,
I mean, yeah, they're the one taking on the risk there. And so we do have agents that do that.
okay, it's a big liability for Randy, for a broker.
Well, all the liability. I mean,
Yeah.
and so to Terry's point, it's not a liability until something happens and, oh, hey,
Yeah.
this was damaged and I'm blaming the people that were, hosting the open house. And so, and ultimately it's the listing agent and the client is going to go back, the seller is going to go back to their agent and go, hey, what happened? This is broken, this is missing or whatever. And then at that point, now that listing agent has to go to their broker. That broker then has to go, well, oh, maybe it was this person that was, hosting the open house for me. But ultimately, it falls on the listing broker. So that's why, as a listing brokerage, we don't want anybody from outside our brokerage hosting an open house. There was another question in the comments about should we go in and remove or change the BAC in the MLS? The answer is no. Juan, I think, asked this. It's going to come off. It's going to fall off tomorrow, but it's going to fall off tomorrow at 11:59, right, Terry?
Yes.
So technically, a minute before the 14th is when it's going to be scrubbed. We'll find out on Wednesday whether it worked or not when we go to open the MLS and it's all empty or if it's still there. Anyway, but yeah, don't touch anything. And I've even had somebody ask, like, what if I get a listing right now? What do I put in there? I say put in the commission in there. Worst case scenario, it's going to fall off in a couple days, but it could mean getting an offer right away. Whereas putting zero, you're more likely to detract someone from looking or even asking. So I just say just put it in there for the few hours that we've got left. Should we ask the listing agent how much? Yeah, you can absolutely ask the listing agent how much the BAC is. But here's the thing that we kind of didn't talk about, and I know Terry and I talked about this. Be prepared to hear nothing. Be prepared that you call someone, hey, what's the BAC for this? I don't know. Let's see your offer, right? It's going to be used as a negotiating tool. There is nothing obligating the listing agent to disclose what them and their client have predetermined or what they've had a conversation about. So a lot of the times it's going to be, well, let's see your offer. And at the end of the day, it's all about the bottom line. And here's what I take advantage of this moment and really challenge everyone to use this as a negotiating tool. Because Because what are we going to do when we see a listing it's been on the market 57 days, it's been price reduced already once, no offers, right? What are we going to ask for? We're going to go tops, right? We're going to ask for 3%, right? Because what's the difference of asking for another percentage in commission or submitting an offer that's 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 under asking price, right? At the end of the day, it's just part of the offer. So I would challenge you guys to now use this as part of negotiation. I've negotiated 2.5 with my buyer. And yes, I understand there's going to be some people that don't have it, and working with your lender will help you know, well, yeah, when this is all said and done, they're going to be left with like $200 in their bank account. But if we're going with these dream scenarios, we've been getting all these, well, what ifs? Well, what if your client does have a sizable chunk of change? And so you go, hey, remember how we agreed to 2.5% commission? Well, like I said, the seller's picking up a good chunk of it. They're actually paying 2% of my commission, which means you only have to come up with 0.5%. Well, what's 0.5%? Well, that's only $3,000. Like, okay, fine. Now you've just negotiated 2.5%, where before, what would happen? If you see a BAC in the MLS for 2%, what are you getting? You're getting 2%. That's it. You're taking that because that's what they're offering. Well, now this gives you, so I would argue to look at this as a potential positive. Now, will I modify my BRBC down to 2% if there's no money? Yes, but if there is money, hey, I'm getting paid my 2.5% because this was a pain in the butt, and I showed them houses for months until we found this one. So anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent, but
No, good tangent. Good tangent. And if you think of it from the other side, exactly what Eddie was saying, just from the other side, but if you're representing a seller in this whole thing, and your house has been on the market for a short period of time, and it's listed well, you did a good job with pricing and things like that, but the person comes in and they want $10,000 worth of buyer closing costs, and they want to make sure that section 1 and 2 are done on the termite, and you're asking for a lot. Then to top it off, you're asking for a lot on the compensation side. The negotiation falls right back into play. You know, well, for that price, we're not going to do that much. Okay, you guys are good. I have a 2 o'clock call that I have to go.